Hey guys, I kept thinking about making this video for like months or weeks or whatever, and I just finally hit record one day and started talking. So here we are. It's way longer than I meant for it to be. I mostly just wanted to check out the playlist in the description, so I'm going to say that up front. Check out the playlist in the description. It's a little self-explanatory, but here comes me podcasting about it, more or less, for a while. Also, spoilers for, well, Star Wars movies in general, really. Bye-bye. I have a confession to make. I actually really like The Last Jedi. Like, it seriously, like, might be one of, like, it might be my favorite Star Wars movie. I actually view it as being near flawless. My first time watching it, I had a good time, but a few weird things hung on and like bothered me a little bit. And the second time watching it, all those things just kind of washed away, and I didn't even really notice them. And I had trouble remembering what even bothered me at all the first time around. And then those were both in theaters, and then it came out on Netflix recently, and I watched it a third time, and I'm like, this is such a good movie. It's just fantastic. The action is fantastic. The characters are fantastic. The storylines are just awesome. It really is, like, I think it's everything that I want in a Star Wars movie, basically. It pushes the world forward. Dynamic, major things happen in the story. Everything's character driven, and each character has like an arc within the story, and it's so intricate, but it's also fun, and it zooms along, and all this cool shit's happening, and it's every scene serves a purpose on an emotional level, and all these things are going on. I've been watching for the longest time, and well, first of all, we record a podcast, because if you're wondering, like, why haven't we done a podcast about this? We do, like, spoiler casts and so on like that. And, like, why haven't I done a podcast about Last Jedi? We did do a podcast about Last Jedi. Some people who were there that day would have seen it, because I actually live streamed it. But then there was people on the podcast that didn't want me to air it because they're afraid it could affect it. I guess they think that if they criticize Disney, it can affect their prospects for getting a job there one day or something. Like, it was, I don't know. I was very frustrated by the weird logic of why the podcast was canceled. I still have the files sitting on my computer, but I'm not uploading shit that my friends require me, like, ask me not to upload, because that's just a shitty thing to do. But what my takeaway from the podcast was that first of all, it was very exhausting, because I was the only person on a full cast of people. I was the only person on the podcast who enjoyed the movie. I had a great time, and rewatching the movie only makes me like the movie more. But all three people on the podcast were not having it, and they did not have a good time. And one of my takeaways was that everyone just wants wildly different things, I guess. Like, I was all hyped about, like, the cool storylines and, like, the themes that are introduced and explored in this particular movie, and also the fantastic story arcs and the emotion, the sweeping emotion of very specific things, and how they carry on from scene to scene. And much to my surprise, we spent like the first hour of the podcast arguing about the mechanics of ships. Like, we were arguing about whether bombs can drop in space, even though it's Star Wars and it's all based on World War II imagery anyway, and it's not really the point. And or like arguing the logistics about the ships that were chasing the other ships the entire film, and like that was apparently a crucial thing worth criticizing and arguing about. And it was really weird, because I was all wanting to talk about how you know, like the difference between like what Rose's sister does at the beginning of the movie versus what Rose stops somebody from doing at the end of the movie, and how that's like a specific arc, because Rose was like tracking down and taking out any sort of treasonous traitors, the people trying to escape the battle because they're all cowards, because her sister died for this, and then, you know, learning to, you know, to not let somebody they love die for this thing and sacrifice themselves and martyr themselves every time there's a fight that happens. And like every character has a specific arc where they learn something and cool and it's all earned and it's emotional. Nobody cared. In fact, I keep talking to people that don't care about any of those things, and they talk about really weird, petty things, And oftentimes I don't even agree with the, like, not only do I not think that their criticisms are often worthwhile, but oftentimes I don't even think that they're valid in many cases. It's been a real weird experience. So I've been subscribed to a lot of channels on YouTube. If you watch my recommended videos playlist, which I recommend checking out if you haven't, you probably know that I watch a lot of video essay channels and reviewers and whatnot. And so if you don't care about Star Wars, it's a little late in the video to say this, but you can check that out. It's in the description. I'll link that too. That's just a whole bunch of videos in general that are all about everything, really. It's a really fun playlist to go exploring through. But a lot of those channels all started uploading videos about The Last Jedi because people are so polarized about this, and it's been really interesting going into this, and I've had a lot of fun watching all of their videos. So the purpose of this video is to share my Last Jedi playlist. So that's also a link in the description. So far it's 17 videos. I might add to it in the future, but there's a lot there. So some of the videos are people just rebuking criticisms of the movie and recontextualizing things that people have issues with and giving their take on the situation, stuff like that. Some of the videos are just unabashed, positive videos about The Last Jedi that explore its themes and are very interesting and engaging. In particular, Movies with Mikey is just a fantastic channel in general, and there's a lot of channels that are just about the positivity without dealing with necessarily arguing with people about what they do or don't like about it. Then and if you don't care about The Last Jedi, or you don't care about this argument about The Last Jedi and so on, then I recommend still opening the playlist, because if you just like Star Wars, I've got some things sprinkled in there that you're going to want to check out here and there. Explorations of certain ideas, analyses, and whatnot. And you know, it's all curated by me, so hopefully that means it's okay. Basically, if you just skip over every video that says The Last Jedi in the title, you'll find other interesting things. I got The Case Against the Jedi Order, which is a video that I was very happy to find, because one of the things that appealed to me about The Last Jedi is that I hate the Jedi. I've hated the Jedi for a very long time, and on a lot of Let's Plays and podcasts in the past, you'll hear me go on a rant, like an anti-Jedi rant, where the comments get mad at me, and like other people I'm playing the game with are like disagreeing with me, and so on. And I'm like, no, the Jedi are like these creepy monks that kidnap children and like kind of abuse them until they snap, and that's why they keep making Sith all the time, is because you're kind of like being a fucking monster to people that can't make decisions for themselves. And it's like yeah, I don't like the Jedi at all. I think that they do as much damage as they fix in many cases, and I think they create their own problems, and I think that their entire way of life and rule system is like seriously fucked up, and no amount of saying it's the light side and the good people makes up for like how fucked up a lot of their concepts are. And which leads us to the idea of the gray Jedi, and how like the light and the dark are wrong, because obviously the dark side's wrong. I'm not gonna fucking pretend the Sith have really any upsides besides the fact that like really the closest thing you get is sometimes in like the KOTOR games you meet a Sith here and there that like are more in touch with their emotions and more radical and stuff like that, but maybe not quite mega evil. But really those might just are arguably just more gray Jedi anyway and whatnot. I got a Lindsay Ellis video that's just talking about the roots of fascism in the imagery of the First Order. And actually, no, that was the, oh no, that's the ideology of the First Order. I'm mixing up different videos. She talks about just, well, no, actually it is the roots of fascism still, but just she tries to look at the videos to try to explain even what the First Order cares about, because that's a vague thing that's not as defined well as much as you might think. I got the channel Sideways, which is a channel about music, and he just analyzes music in movies and video games and whatnot, and he's just going into like explaining how John Williams has crafted Rey's theme song between the different movies to, you know, make it adaptable, because they don't necessarily know where the character's going to go, and how he makes that work as a musician. And like there's cool shit going on there. We got a Jay Nicholson video that's basically a comedy video about the dark side, where you just state things that have happened in the lore of the story and the weird mess that it becomes really quickly. There's one that compares Star Wars to the Dark Crystal, because The Dark Crystal is basically my favorite movie, so I am biased in favor of putting that kind of video in this playlist. And to top it all off, we got the Philosophy of Kreia, a critical examination of Star Wars. KOTOR 2, real cool game. Whole game about this concept of the Grey Jedi that I've discussed before. It's like a core theme of the entire video game, which is a cool thing. And it's the kind of shit that Obsidian does, is they like to go into the meta-analysis of a narrative and actually question it and challenge the audience about what the narrative means and what the concepts in it mean. So when they were given this ability to make a sequel to the Star Wars RPG, Knights of the Old Republic, they kind of dove in. And in many ways, I think that The Last Jedi is the KOTOR 2 of Star Wars movies. And maybe the fact that I played KOTOR 2 like had me ready for this idea earlier, and people who weren't primed for this kind of thinking, and maybe that's why they reacted the way they did. I don't know. A lot of people still seem to drink the Jedi Kool-Aid about how they're so pure and good and above criticism, which is fucking weird, because like KOTOR 2 really takes them to task at times, but also like the entire prequel trilogy is about the Jedi Order failing because they suck and all of their ideas are bad. And that part's not wrong. There's a lot of other reasons that the prequels are bad, for like 100 reasons, but like the Jedi Order as they're presented and what they are is clearly bad, and then they fail because they suck at what they do, and they emotionally neglect somebody to an extent that becomes abuse, to the point of saying, that person you love, they're going to die? Good, you should be happy for them. I'm like, what the fuck, Yoda? Wow, what a way to... I love this character. Yoda's great. As far as why I like The Last Jedi, without going into the plot details partly because all these videos I'm linking are going to go into that shit anyway if you want to watch them, and that's redundant at this point, and I don't really feel like redoing the entire podcast again, but admittedly, I really like shows like Breaking Bad, which Rian Johnson actually directed several of the best episodes of. Like, seriously, look at which episodes of Breaking Bad were directed by Rian Johnson, and you'll be like, oh fuck, it's that one and that one. Ozymandias? Holy shit. That was that was kind of a big deal in the final season, wasn't it, that episode? And I also really enjoyed Looper, but ignoring that tangent, I really enjoyed watching like Breaking Bad, and I enjoy Fargo, and I enjoy Coen Brothers movies. I enjoy these movies where people go about their plans, do things based on their character and motivation, and oftentimes they are punished for their sins, or their plans fall apart for completely reasonable reasons, or the happenstance of the many people's plans overlapping. And like I'm cool with failure. I like failure. So when people fail, and it's not just stupid nonsense, like I'm cool with that. And so like and in particular, I love breaking down the protagonist in a franchise. And The Last Jedi is a movie where so many of these people think that they can just go break all the rules and be a rogue, and I subvert the order or the chain of command, and ignore all of the authority figures because they're the protagonist and they know better, and they're going to solve all the problems, and everyone's going to be mad at them, but everyone's going to have to thank them when it's all over because they won. Basically the plot of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, except in Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, in both of those movies they get arrested because the person in command is basically a corrupt nightmare monster. But like that's the arc we do so much in movies, is Guy has plan and nobody believes Guy, and Guy subverts everybody and goes past everybody and ignores the people that are supposed to actually do this kind of stuff, and goes all vigilante and rogue, and then they win, and then they're rewarded for their really shitty behavior because they were right, because the story says so. And in this movie, it's a bunch of people doing exactly that, and it turns out they're being assholes, and they're the reason everything gets worse, because turns out other people might be doing things for a reason, and maybe you should actually not do any of the things you're doing, like go on secret missions against the orders of your entire remaining rebellion, and maybe you shouldn't keep vital intel from said leaders of rebellion because you think you know better, even though you just finished not knowing better immediately at the beginning of the movie and getting a bunch of people killed. And like I calling protagonists out on their shit is fun, calling Jedi out on their shit is fun, and the story itself earns a lot of emotion. And like I don't know what to say, man. Like, I'm like gripped with the screen when I watch this movie, and I've watched it 3 times, which is really unusual because I don't really rewatch movies very often. But like, I like Star Wars again, guys. I don't know why it had to be so controversial. I don't know why everyone's so angry. I still can't appreciate why people are so angry. But like, this whole reboot of Star Wars happened, or sequels started happening because Disney got it, and like, Force Awakens was okay. It's fine. It's cool. It's like the average Marvel movie where I'll watch it once and it'll be okay, and I'll probably never watch it again. But, you know, that was fine. But Rogue One was garbage. And 6 months after Last Jedi, Solo was once again, actual garbage. The only upside of Solo was that part at the very end where all the plans are conflicting with each other, and oh man, this guy's doing this. Well, I thought you would do that, so I'm doing this. Well, I thought you were doing this, so I'm doing this. And like, that was the only fun part of the entire movie, because the rest of it was like garbage explaining of stupid one-liners from the original trilogy, and none of it was really any good. And Rogue One is just a bunch of completely undeveloped characters doing a thing that we already know is going to happen. And so like, you're not there for the story, because the story is the thing you already know is going to happen, because the moment the movie starts, you know what the whole story is going to be. But you're not there for the characters, because the characters aren't characters. They're like a name and a face, but that's all they, but then they just do like 2 things and die. And then that's that's it. That's all they do. And then none of them are developed. Like, the beginning of the movie, there's a little girl and her parents die. And then like, I'm like, oh no, what happens next? And skip to her being way older, and she's like in a jail cell. And I'm like, okay, a bunch of interesting shit happened off camera. Can we go back and have that movie? And they're like, no, now she's pessimistic or something because she's in jail. But then she gets out of jail and just gives speeches about hope the entire movie, and then sacrifices herself for a cause. And I'm like, what? But what was her character? What was her motivation? What are any of these characters' motivations? What are their personalities like? Like, the other guy was like, oh man, I shot that guy, cold-blooded stuff. I'm never going to be like that the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie, I'm just going to be a normal protagonist. All right, wait, what is your character? Fuck. It's like the writers of Rogue One were like, well, they're going to die anyway, so why bother developing them? And so they didn't develop them. I'm like, okay, at least Solo had developed characters. It just wasn't a very good movie, but the characters were better than the ones in Rogue One, which, like, the first time I watched Rogue One, I was like, alright. Second time I watched Rogue One, I was numb. Just emotionally numb. Because I felt nothing. Because there's just nothing in that movie. And it's like, every time I watch Rogue One, it gets worse. And every time I watch Last Jedi, it gets better. I'm just ranting now. This was going to be like a 2-second... Oh, wow, we're at like 20 minutes in. This was going to be a 2-second thing where I was just like, hey, I made a playlist. Check it out. If you want it, if you want. I think it's neat. And that's what this whole video was supposed to be. That was my entire goal, was just to be like, yo guys, I like The Last Jedi, and I keep thinking about it, and other people that I follow on YouTube keep thinking about it and making videos about it. Here's the ones that I thought were pretty good. Check them out. That was the entire motivation of this video. But now I'm like getting into the trenches and whatnot. I've considered many things. I've considered the idea of like, what if I did a commentary over the thing, but I have no experience doing commentary track things like some YouTubers like to do. So I'd at least want to have other people on it. But I don't know a single other person that likes The Last Jedi that does YouTube videos. Like, all of my friends hate it. So that's kind of out the window. The idea of doing a 2-person chatting about the movie thing. I don't want to redo an entire podcast because I already did a podcast and it just can't be aired. But it happened already. So like, I've already blown that load a little bit. But yeah. Enjoy the movie. Star Wars is good again, or something. I don't know. No one agree. I've never been more confused by a controversy. I've never been taken more off guard by people being mad at a thing. Because, like, I just genuinely love the movie. And I've been largely on board with people up until now with Star Wars movies. And there's been just a massive split here. But like, it's a good thing to me, because the franchise went from being neutral to like me being vaguely pessimistic because I'm like, Disney's just going to run this into the ground and nothing's going to good is going to come of this, to now like making the coolest shit ever. And now I'm super interested. I'm not sure what to think of episode 9 because J.J. Abrams is going to make it, and that fuck doesn't know how to end anything. All he ever does is go mystery box and then leave. It's pretty much what he does. Like, I've watched several J.J. Abrams television shows where they just start with J.J. Abrams sets up mysteries. Then he abandons the show, and some poor writer has to finish writing Fringe or finish writing Lost and just pick up the pieces where J.J. Abrams left them. And he did the same thing with Star Wars. He made a bunch of dumb mysteries that weren't really interesting, and he never has a plan for them. So it's not like he had a good version of the story to go with, because he never actually plans endings, and then he just throws it at other people to deal with. But so he did the mystery box thing with fucking Star Wars, and then Rian Johnson had to deal with it, and all of his answers were way better than any of the people who have ever had to answer J.J. Abrams' answers have ever been. Like, I've watched people try to answer J.J. Abrams' questions before in all these different television shows that he starts, and they always suck. Like, none of these things end well, and Rian Johnson had a fantastic ending. I'm like, yes, yes. This is a great dichotomy where, like, Rey comes from nothing. That's cool, because she's not a creepy... First of all, it's really uncomfortable how, like, Star Wars is all about bloodlines and, like, superior blood, the way that Harry Potter also is. Like, this weird thing where, like, chosen ones are people who... Like, the galaxy can only be saved by a chosen one, and that chosen one has to be from the superior bloodline. I'm like, that's fucking a creepy thing to incorporate into your story. And the first movie was called The Force Awakens, which specifically suggests the idea that the Force will, you know, awaken as if it's blooming, maybe from places where it normally does not, because that's, you know, an awakening. So, like, the idea of Rey being somebody who just kind of spawned Force powers after just being sort of like a enslaved child on some planet, and that's just where she was, is totally fine. And it's that, and then the idea of her, especially the idea of her being this person who is inherently light side because she's like a big fangirl of Jedi Legends and wants to be someone and wants to be important, but she's from nowhere, while Kylo Ren is trying to destroy his own history because he is from the Skywalker and Solo bloodlines, and it's really important to him how cool and important, like, he's all big and important and high blood from the start, yet he's destroying his own history and destroying the people that brought him there, and wanting to tear down everything. But then you have, like, the highborn chosen one blood person is the Sith, and the lowborn unimportant person is the Jedi, and the Jedi person is getting closer to Sith thinking, and the Sith person's struggling with potentially going towards, like, light side thinking. They're both... There's a moment where they come together, and the gray Jedi might happen, but... It doesn't, but it's, like, there, and we have a whole extra movie left, so, like, this is all interesting. This is all way more interesting trajectory than anything that the Force Awakens did. Like, this movie leaves us in a place that's dynamically cooler for the storytelling than where it started, and that's a good thing for a middle chapter to do. And also, by the way, I recommend rewatching The Empire Strikes Back, because y'all keep saying it's the best Star Wars movie ever, and I'm not saying the sentence sounds like it. This sentence sounds like I'm about to say, like, and it sucks. No, I'm just saying you might notice that a lot of the common criticisms about about Last Jedi apply to The Empire Strikes Back, because it turns out it's a movie about, like, everyone's plans failing and, like, questionable distances being covered at specific times and people accomplishing nothing and a bunch of other stuff, because it's the dark middle chapter where the heroes are at their lowest points and stuff like that. And it also features the protagonist being tempted to the dark side and disobeying their orders and refusing to actually get properly trained because they care more about saving their friends, and, you know, just a lot of similarities. Anyway, this is a weird long rant, and it's gotten longer than I meant for it to be. So, bye. I hope you enjoyed this micro podcast about The Last Jedi, I guess. It wasn't fully intended, but here we are. And check out the playlist in the description for too much videos about Last Jedi. Or if you're sated now, because I did this dumb rant in the middle of the afternoon for some reason, and you don't want to hear any more about The Last Jedi or Star Wars, because I also said there was other Star Wars videos in that playlist, hey, why don't you check out my recommended videos playlist? It's about a bunch of things. Like, just in the recent videos, The Avengers, John Carpenter's The Thing, Life is Strange, Walking Dead, Season 2, the Telltale one, Bloodborne, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Phil Fish, bunch of things. Somebody making a weirdly long analysis of the Lorax. It's a very long playlist. Seriously, my recommended videos playlist is now 326 videos, and it's just going to keep growing. I'm not just adding every video I like to it. It's really like this. It's the ones I think are particularly interesting, while also trying to showcase a wide breadth of different channels. So if you, not only is it a cool video playlist, but it's also like, if you check out the videos, if you like the video, then you're like, hey, maybe I'll subscribe to this channel, and you can learn about like a dozen or several dozen new channels you haven't subscribed to in the past. And shit. I'm just gonna stop talking now. I actually have work to get done, and I'm not doing it because I'm doing this. See you guys later. Bye.